Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our second session on tools of transformation. Today we'll be going to be talking about place source potential. And place source potential is really important when we think about using something like the climate toolkit. I think it's important to remember that it's not a contest. It's not trying to see who can do the most. It's not trying to duplicate what other people are doing. It's really all about trying to figure out makes the most sense for you to do in your community, in your organization. And for doing that, we rely on regenerative thinking. And we're going to give you a little bit of an introduction to regenerative thinking first, and really focusing in on the ideas of essence, understanding who you are, understanding who your community is, and then also looking at what the potential is for you, what makes the most sense for what you should be doing in your community. So let's get started. We'll just start with a little bit of a quick review on regenerative thinking and why it's important. Several years ago, I heard a statistic that said that if everyone in the world were to live like we live in the United States, it would take 5 planets worth of resources to do that. And that's obviously not possible. So we need to be smarter. We need to be smarter about thinking about the way we do things. Because what we see is our unsustainable use of natural resources is leading to such things like climate change, habitat destruction, loss of biodiversity, and environmental racism and global inequities. And we tend to think of these things as being a problem. But these are not the problem. These are a symptom of the problem. The real problem is the lifestyles we lead. And this is where we really need to focus. We need to really focus in on what is the root cause of these symptoms that we're seeing that are causing so much problems in the world today. And it's really important for us to recognize how human and environmental health are so inextricably connected. There was a study that was done by the Stockholm Resilience Center that came out in October of 2018, and was called Transformation is Feasible. And what they were trying to understand is how can organizations achieve the highest amount of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals? And what they wanted to do was to figure out what's the best way to do that. And they decided to model 4 different ways of achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And the first model they looked at was called business as usual, which they called the same. The second model they looked at was called faster, where they said, okay, what we really need to do is ramp up our GDP, get as much money as we can to throw at the problems. The third model they looked at was called harder. And here they said, okay, let's just focus all of our energy and our money and our resources and actually trying to achieve the 17 goals. And then the fourth model they looked at was called smarter. In this model, they said, you know what? The traditional ways of our doing things are just not working. We need some bold transformational policies. We have to really mix things up and really think about different ways of doing things. So when they modeled those different scenarios out, what they found was that only one of them kept us from going out of the safe zone for planetary distress. All the other models, the same, faster, and harder, actually put us below the red zone for planetary distress. It was only the smarter ones that actually started to reverse some of the damage we were doing on the planet. So you may ask, okay, what do we mean by when we talk about transformation? Well, we think of transformation, a good model for transformational thinking is regenerative thinking. And one of the best ways to understand that is through some of the work that was done by Carol Sanford. And she talks about these 4 different paradigms of how we can interact with the world. And in the first model she talks about is the exchange or extract value model. And in this model, people see the world as fragments, there for the taking. It's all about them. They're going to get what they need. They're going to take what they need. And quite often they don't think about or consider what harm they might be doing to others or to the planet. The second model she talked about is the less bad model, the arrest disorder model. In this model, people still see the world as fragments, but now they're trying to stabilize them. It's not about me anymore, it's about us. We're starting to see some interconnectedness. And you can think of this as where the environmental movement started. This whole idea of let's reduce, reuse, and recycle. Let's try to figure out how we can be less bad. The third model she talks about is called a do-good model. In this model, people still see the world as fragments, but now they're trying to improve them. It's about us. We're starting to see some reciprocity. We're trying to make things better. Now, you actually may look at this and say, well, that makes like a lot of sense. We should be focusing on it from a do-good paradigm. But the problem with this model is that it assumes that one person knows what good is, and they need to tell everybody else what that is, and that everybody else should be trying to do that. And that doesn't work for a number of reasons. One is people don't like to be told what to do. The second is everyone's different. Every community is different. Every culture is different. Every country is different. And we all need to figure out what makes the most sense for each of us based on our own individual lessons. So the fourth model she talks about is called the regenerative model. In this model, people don't see the world as fragments. They see it as wholes existing within or in interrelationship with other wholes. And we have all these interconnected systems and all these nested systems. And anytime you do anything in one place, it affects everything else. And it's all about relationships and understanding the relationships we have with each other, with other species, and with everything else on the planet. And it's all about trying to figure out how the work that we do can actually work to help so that everything can evolve to their greatest capacity. And this is the whole idea behind regenerative thinking, and this is the type of thinking that we're trying to use here at FIPS, but we're also trying to share with others as well. And Carol goes on to talk about 7 first principles of regenerative thinking. And we really just want to focus on 2 of them right now, this idea of essence. We recognize that every living being is unique, as is every institution and every community, every culture, country. And that the second idea we want to talk about is development. And this the idea where we want to increase the capacity of everything and everyone to be vital and viable based on their own individual essence. So again, here, trying to understand what makes the most sense for that individual person, species, or institution. That's what's really critical here. And one of the best places to start with that is to really understand your place. Not only understanding your organization, but understand the place in which your institution is located. And now I'd like to turn it over to Joe, who's going to go dig a little bit deeper into this idea of place-based potential.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thanks to everybody who came out today. Just one moment while I pull up my slides. I'm excited to talk about place source potential. Hearing Richard talk about the difference between do good and regenerative, the really place source potential rests right at the cusp of the difference between those two, because it is about trying to understand where you live and where you work, and bringing that to the community in the form of climate solutions that can work for them. So I want to start us off by jumping into a quick exercise to get us thinking in this direction. So I'm pulling up here on the screen a slide. We're going to put everyone into breakout rooms. You may want to, if you can, screen capture this slide in order to be able to refer to it. But the call to action is this: think of a place that's important to you. Your institution, your neighborhood, your city are all potential subjects. And consider the following. What makes this place unique? What is it known for within the larger world? What do the people who live here know it for? What is its environment like? How does it experience the seasons? In what ways does climate change threaten it? And what are the people like here? What are their talents? What are their perspectives? What makes them different? So what we're going to do is we're going to break out for 10 minutes. I'd like you to take notes on these questions for 5 minutes, and then I'd like you to share with one another in your group verbally for the other 5 minutes. So keep a close time on that. And in 10 minutes, we will bring everybody back together for a little bit of sharing. Now that you've had a chance to think about place a little bit as a subject, let's delve into what we call place source potential and how it can hopefully help you as a planning framework to to plan programming and outreach and other initiatives that speak directly to the place where you work and live. So in regenerative thinking, we consider ourselves and the actions we take through the lens of our embedded role within larger systems. And those systems are defined by the places where we live and learn and work. So for example, right now I'm within Phipps Conservatory, which is within the Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh, which is within the city, within Allegheny County, within Pennsylvania, within the US, et cetera, within planet Earth. But I also note that I'm within Phipps, which is in the world of public gardens, which is in the world of educational cultural institutions like museums, gardens, and zoos, which is in the world of nonprofits and charities. And those are also nested layers. So there's a lot of ways that we can visualize ourselves as nested. We all work presently in or around the world of educational cultural institutions. So there's some common ground for us to talk about our nestedness there. When we talk about our embedded role within a system or place, we try to hold a few things in mind. The unique character of the place, which we call the essence of the place. The unique areas in which the people of the place can increase their capacity to be vital and viable. In other words, like to think about the ways that they can offer new things to the world, and where we as an institution can position ourselves to make interventions that increase that capacity. So like we like to imagine that we can, actively participate in the revitalization of our neighborhoods, our cities, our regions, and that through our activity, we can improve quality of life for the people here, increase the resilience of the environment, and forge new bonds between people and the natural world. Because, at the end of the day, people are moved to care about things that they understand, have a deep connection to, and find beautiful and appreciable. And so that's the work of us in terms of the way that we connect people to the natural world. And all of us have a role to play in that. Because as institutions, we're uniquely trusted by our communities among our professional peers. So that's the general idea of place source potential. And as far as the utilization of this, when you're planning a project, especially with a group, you can use some of these questions to sort of direct thought around specific topics related to your space. As Richard mentioned in his opening remarks, these solutions will not be one size fits all. There is a lot we can learn from each other, but to really get our communities on board, it's important that we contextualize everything within the ways that it affects them. So I'd like to do a second breakout with you. And I'd like that breakout to take on a second question that you can use to build upon your thinking from the previous exercise. Now that you're aware of what we mean about our position within larger systems, our nestedness, I'd like you to come back to your subject and consider the following. What contribution could this place make to the larger system it is embedded within? So think about that larger system. You can think one level out, you can think two levels out, but imagine that nestedness in your mind and think about what contribution it could make to the larger cause. So what value can its essence bring to the arena of climate action, and how can your institution make that happen? So for this breakout, we're going to take 15 minutes. We're going to again do 5 minutes in writing, and then I'd like us to have 10 minutes to do some small group discussion around this topic. So I'll share a quote that I think speaks interestingly to the way that regenerative value gets created in a community that I like to keep close in my thoughts when planning this kind of work. There's a lot here, so I'm going to go through it slowly. Regenerative value is created when the organization, that could be, your institution or wherever you're working, is able to increase the ableness or capacity of its communities. So what they're able to do after interacting with you that they weren't able to do before, in a way that people become better able to pursue their aspirations and live healthier lives. That's another part that's super interesting here. The alignment of what the planet needs, meeting the aspirations of the individual so that they're reconciled and working toward one goal. Institutions contribute more meaningfully to the well-being of the community, and natural systems increase their health, reliance, and diversity. So again, a big sentence that's saying a lot of things, but the biggest ones that I want to highlight for the moment are increasing the ableness and capacity of the community members, and doing so in a way that allows them to be better able to pursue their aspirations. No matter how small, everyone who's coming through your doors is coming there with a particular idea in mind of something they want to get out of that. And what they're getting out of that is building some capacity for them. Even if it's just, we talked about gardens and calm and respite, which doesn't sound like in and of itself, it's a capacity build. But what is that respite for? Why is that needed? What's going on outside that's bringing people in to calm down at a garden? We can talk about those things and the way that's part of their aspirational need and how that's fulfilled. So as you consider your climate action work in the coming year with us and with one another, remember to consider the potential of where it's taking place. It's a global responsibility, but the place source potential to address it begins on the local community level. So that's it for today. We're going to send some various resources out in a follow-up email after this that'll help you to dive into some of these topics a little bit further. And we've now convened this group in January and again in May. We're going to try again for August or September to bring you back together again for one more of these sessions. I'm just getting up for a moment because I wanted to share something that we're doing here at Phipps. We've built these little cubes, which are full of frameworks to help us to think regeneratively when we're in these meeting spaces together. And this has kind of been like a North Star for me to talk to you about new topics. So I'll be picking something from the cube to bring in front of you again for the next session, and hopefully give you another way to shape your thinking and to shape your thinking in groups. So does anyone have any questions before we break for today? All righty. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. It was a pleasure to share thought with you in this way, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.